Folks, this is vid number 22, Doc Reynolds Skunk. Doc Reynolds Skunk. I got a phone call from Doc Reynolds one day. It seems there was a critter digging in his garden at night. He wasn't sure what it was, but he set a trap for it, a leg hole trap. He caught something and wanted me to come down and get rid of it. He didn't know what it was, as it had dug into his garden retaining wall and made a hole. For those familiar with Tunkhannock, his home and office was the second building on the left, going south on 29 from the traffic light. It has been the Mayflower florist for some 20 years or so now. Not knowing what to expect and having limited resources, I ended up with one of those heavy meat boxes with double walls and two flaps on the top. I took that and an old carpet. I figured if I could get the critter into the box, I'd cover it and make it dark and keep the critter calm. From the street, it looks like a single-story building, but it's built into the bank and is 3 stories in the back. I drove around back by way of Gay's parking lot. Doc's little garden was about 20 by 20 or so, but it had a step up in the middle. That step was held by a small laid stone retaining wall only about 10 inches high. I got out the box and carpet and a flashlight. I looked into the spot where the rocks were removed, and there was some fresh dirt. Yep, my worst fear, a skunk. There was a string coming out of the hole and was tied to the little fence for the peas to grow on. Doc came out on the porch and yelled down, "Don, just shoot it." Nope, I'm not going to shoot a skunk right in the center of town. I'm sure you're imagining the same scenario that came to my mind. Also, I could see in my mind's eye the headline in the next issue of the Tunkhannock Examiner. Mrs. Reynolds was observing the whole time from the top porch. I opened that meat box and stood it on end with the flaps extended at an angle to make sort of a guide. Then I cut the string. I was contemplating my next move. She asked me, "What are you going to do now?" Well, I got innovative. I just said, "Come on, skunk, get in the box." Holy crap! The skunk, the trap securely on his right front foot, came out and walked right into the box. I gently closed the flaps and tipped the box down and put the carpet over it. Mrs. Reynolds said if I hadn't seen it myself, I'd never believe it. I was just as amazed as she was. I put the box in the back of my Dodge Power Wagon and headed back to the house. On the way, I was trying to figure out how I was going to get the trap off and release the skunk safely. Everybody, Lou, Roy, and Dick, was on day shift. Frank was away on vacation. The only ones available were Louise and my younger son, Dennis. He was about 8 years old at the time. By the time I got home, I had sort of a plan. I went into the garage and found a piece of plywood about 15 to 18 inches square. I sawed a V-shaped notch in the middle of one edge about 1.5 by 2 inches deep. I told Dennis to get in the truck. I needed his help. We got in the truck and went down and around the development and up the dirt access road that led to the big field up behind the development. It was a great place to hunt woodchucks in the summer and call fox in the winter. Now there is a 1.3 million square foot P&G distribution center in that space. Anyway, I got to the top and turned around. Next I took the box and the plywood, and Dennis and I walked about 50 feet or so from the truck. I then set the covered box down in the middle of the old road. I had Dennis hold the plywood with the notch on the bottom. I opened the flap on my side. Nope, the skunk was not in a good position. I closed the flap. The skunk shuffled around a little. I raised the flap again. Yep, now I could do it, as the skunk was under the closed flap and the trap was on my side. Taking the plywood, I stood it up with the notch on the bottom and placed the notch over the skunk's front leg and held it against the closed flap. I instructed Dennis to hold it in place for me, which he did. Now I could use 2 hands and take the trap off, which I did. I set it aside and put my hand on top of the plywood and told Dennis, "Run to the truck," which he did without hesitation. I stood up and ran for the truck with the plywood in hand. We watched the box for a short time, and pretty soon up pops the skunk's head. He surveyed his surroundings and then hopped over and out of the far end of the box and headed for the woods. He got lost in the tall grass pretty quick. I retrieved the box, carpet, and trap. Then Dennis and I went to town and returned the trap to the dock. That escapade was nerve-wracking enough, but Roy and I had a worse one that I will relate next. And that's the end of Doc Reynolds' skunk story. All the best.